All right, so Google just officially announced some of their new Pixel devices. They have the Pixel 8, the Pixel 8 Pro, and the Pixel Watch 2. Now, I was able to spend a little bit of time with them. In terms of the phones, there's some new features. They're $100 more than they were last year, but the big thing, at least to me, is that they now have 7 years of OS support. 7. It's pretty wild. Okay, so let's start with the design. The Pixel 8 and 8 Pro have a very similar design language to the 7 and 7 Pro from last year. The corners of the phone are more rounded this year, and there's a blue color on the Pro device this year called Bay, and I think it's a really nice looking blue. The 8 is a little bit smaller than last year's 7. It still has a glossy back glass panel as well as a matte finish for the aluminum frame. The Pixel 8 Pro, though, has a matte finish on its back glass. It's like a silky smooth finish on that glass compared to the glass back on the 7 Pro, but it does still retain that kind of polished aluminum rail as well as the camera hump on the back of the device. There's also a new sensor on the bottom right that's a temperature sensor. So the Pixel 8 Pro, and only the Pro, has the ability to obtain a temperature by bringing the phone up close to an object. Now, I don't know how accurate this thing is. We'll have to do some proper testing in the review, but that is very cool to me that that's built right into the phone. Now, the screen on the regular Pixel 8 is slightly smaller than it was on the Pixel 7 because it's a slightly smaller device this year. They both still have flat screens like the 8 and the 7, but the 8 Pro also has a flat screen this year, and it has even bezels all the way around the device. On the Pixel 7 Pro last year, that bottom bezel, like that chin, was just a little bit thicker than the top and the sides, which wasn't a huge deal, but the curved edges, I just never appreciated curved edges on phones. So I'm glad the 8 Pro is now flat. The Pixel 8 now uses a 120Hz display, so it can switch between 60 and 120. It's a little bit faster than last year's 7, but the Pixel 8 Pro, it can now downclock quite aggressively from 120 all the way down to 1 Hz if it needs to, and it's just for battery savings, but on Pixel devices, a little bit of battery savings is always nice. But the other thing is that this year, for whatever reason, Google decided to lean on some kind of branded marketing with their displays, and they're using this term called Actua. So they have the Actua display on the 8, and then the Super Actua display on the 8 Pro. So other companies name their displays as well. Apple's got their Retina screens, Samsung's got their Infinity screens. It's a little strange, but they got a term now too. The new phones are both running Google's Tensor G3 chips. Based on the leaks we've seen of it, it's nothing super crazy, like 10-15% faster. I'm more interested in the power efficiency to see if there's any kind of battery savings there. But based on the kind of stated battery life of these phones, it doesn't seem like there's anything significant. So both of them are slated as 31 hours based on Google's internal testing, which is the same number they had for the Pixel 7 and 7 Pro as well. So both the 8 and the 8 Pro have improved biometric security on the front-facing cameras. So previously on Pixel devices, you couldn't log into like banking apps and certain password apps using the face biometrics. You'd have to use your fingerprint or a pattern. Now it allows you to do it with that front-facing camera, which is huge. I think for me personally, it's like the banking apps especially, that's fixed. The other thing is that the front-facing camera on the 8 Pro, and again, only the Pro, now supports autofocus. I feel like software is what's locking that out of the 8, but at least the 8 Pro has it. Now, in terms of the rear cameras on the Pro, there looks to be upgrades across the board, but the ultra-wide hardware is completely different. New sensor, new lens. It's much bigger this time around. It's supposedly quite improved for macro photography as well. The Pixel 7 Pro could get 3 centimeters away from an object and still focus. Now you can go 2 centimeters, so like 50% closer to an object, so you're just gonna get literally 50% more detail. The Pixel 8 Pro camera system gets a few exclusive features that the 8 doesn't get. The two of most interest to me are the Pro Control, so you can just get much more dialed in on the exact shot you're taking, but also you get night sight for video on the 8 Pro. The 8 doesn't get that. But both of these cameras have this new feature. It's like an AI-based feature called Best Take, and this was really weird to me. Interesting, but also weird. Okay, so you've seen Top Shot from previous generations of Google hardware, right? So Top Shot would have a camera. When you take a picture, it would get like a cluster of shots, like let's say a burst of 4 or 5 shots, and then it would pick out the best one. It would do like the best composed shot. Now they've taken that to the next level and they call it Best Take. And it's the same idea. So when you take your shot, it'll grab a bunch of photos, but instead of just grabbing a frame that's perfect, it'll stitch in and kind of Frankenstein the best version of people's smiles and faces so that it has the best looking composition. But my issue with it is that it's not real. Like with Top Shot, the stuff before, that it would grab a bunch of frames, but the frame that it selects, that's a real frame. Like that's something that actually happened in real life. But with Best Take, it's bordering fake. Like, it's this kind of enhanced reality that's better than real life, which, now that I'm thinking out loud, is not all that different from when they use the magic eraser tool where you're like removing people from photos. That also never happened, but I don't know. It's just we're creeping towards this AI generated stuff that's like very impressive, like technically very impressive. It makes you go, should we really be doing this? Okay, so all of this, all these new features, they're not massive changes in hardware. There's a couple hardware tweaks here and there, but I think the user experience gets improved quite a bit, but it comes at the cost of an extra $100. So the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro are $700 and $1,000 respectively, which surprises me for a couple reasons. First, it doesn't feel like the hardware changes that have come to these devices really warrant that bump up in price. Like, the hardware reader is still the same. It's still an optical sensor. The camera hardware hasn't drastically changed. Like, a lot of the tweaks and adjustments seem like they're in the software. And secondly, that's like the good pricing has always been one of the main appeals of Pixel devices. Like, anytime I do a recommendation or anything, it's because they're cheaper, right? But now at this pricing, it seems like it's on par with a lot of the other flagships. So it's like, that's weird. I do think that, with Google's sales, like, they have very aggressive sales quite frequently that allows them to have like a bigger drop in price if they want to hit something, which is kind of neat, but I don't know. It just seems strange. Okay, but the one thing I haven't touched on yet, and maybe this contributes to the cost of these devices, is the software support. So Google is stating that they're going to give 7 years of feature updates, security updates, and operating system updates. 7 years, like, it's crazy. If you think about it, right now we're on Pixel 8. 7 years out from now, that's Pixel 15? It seems impossible. It seems comically impossible that you could have the Pixel 15 out, and then they're still supporting the Pixel 8 in terms of operating system updates. That seems truly impossible. Now, I commend them for this ambitious project. I don't think any company's ever committed to, we'll do 7 years. A part of me is very hopeful and think this is awesome, but there's a sliver of me that's like, Google, it's Google. They could just cancel this at any time. They could be like, nah, we decided that 7 years was too long. We're done. No, it's cool. We're closing that program. It's entirely possible because Google has done stuff like that in the past. I give them the benefit of the doubt. I love to see 7 years of software support, but the reason why I'm so stoked about it is because software support, for one, it gives a lot of value to the product, right? There's a reason why iPhones retain their value so well, and one of the reasons is it's got great support, right? Old phones that still run the same software as the newest phones, that's awesome. But secondly, having that software and feature updates, it's really useful for just extending the kind of joy that we get out of these devices over time. But I also think that if Google actually does 7 years of support, it'll put pressure on other brands like Samsung and OnePlus and just basically every phone brand to be like, hey, it can be done. So they do have the advantage of making their own chip or semi-making their own chips with the Tensor stuff, so it's a little easier to pull off. But yeah, I think the existence of a company that does a 7-year software support promise, that's got to be good for the industry. Okay, there's two other things I want to talk about real briefly. The watch. So this right here is the older generation of Pixel Watch. This had, the biggest issue for me was battery life. This new version, the Pixel Watch 2, supposedly has better battery life to the point where it can do 24 hours while using the always-on display. The old one couldn't do that. And also, the heart sensor. The Pixel Watch 2 has a new multi-path heart rate sensor, so it's just more accurate heart data compared to the first generation of Pixel Watch. Last thing, the Pixel Buds. So there's not any new hardware, there's some new colors, but there is a new software update that does something super cool. It's listening stats. So it'll tell you how loud you've been listening to your music, but also there's a real-time function where you can have the Pixel Buds in and it'll tell you how loud the volume is in your ears. If you've ever cranked up the volume and you've wondered, how loud is it right now? Am I damaging my eardrums? I've been on a plane for a while, it's gone higher and higher. That has happened a lot. I feel like people are going to appreciate that. That's really cool. Okay, that basically wraps up this kind of first look at the Pixel hardware. Reviews to come.